Okay, I want you to just look at the stack of papers we've got on the desk today. It's heavy.
Hmm.
And I don't just mean physically heavy, though we have, what, 3 different historical accounts of the Great Depression, the full text of the Emergency Banking Act of 1933, and then this.
Yeah.
This whole other stack of modern white papers on central bank digital currencies.
It's a lot. I'll give you that. But it's all necessary.
I know.
Because if you just look at the headlines, the tweets, you completely miss the actual mechanism. You miss the gears turning underneath the surface.
And that's exactly the mission today. We are doing a deep dive into something that, frankly, keeps a lot of people awake at night.
Oh, yeah.
It's the fear of confiscation. You're lying in bed, you've done all the work, you've built your savings.
Right.
Maybe you're a traditionalist like me and you've got some gold coins tucked away because, you trust the long history of money.
Or maybe you're on the cutting edge, like you're looking at things like self-custody for Bitcoin because you want that absolute financial sovereignty.
Exactly. But then that nagging thought creeps in, right? What if the government just takes it?
It's the ultimate counterparty risk, the state itself. And when you're in a debt spiral, which, let's be honest, we are undeniably in one, the state becomes a very, very hungry counterparty.
It does. And usually when we talk about this, and I see it everywhere, in the forums, on social media, people have this very specific, almost Hollywood-style picture in their heads of how it all goes down.
The raid.
Yeah, the raid. It's always the raid. They imagine it's the middle of the night. Black SUVs screech up to the curb, guys in full tactical gear kick down the front door.
Metal detectors and floorboards being ripped up.
Exactly. They're tearing apart the mattress, looking for your Krugerrands or your hardware wallet. It's so dramatic, it's terrifying, and it creates this urge to go out and build a bunker.
It creates a visceral reaction. It validates the paranoia, But when you actually look at the source material we have here, that whole movie version is actually a dangerous distraction.
A distraction. How so? Because it's wrong. Or because it's just unlikely.
Because it's inefficient. And governments, especially desperate governments, they care about one thing above all: efficiency.
Okay.
If you are preparing for a SWAT team, you're preparing for completely the wrong war.
That's a bold statement. Looking back at the history, specifically looking at what happened in 1933, the government did come for the gold. They took millions of ounces. Are you telling me they just asked politely?
No, not at all. I'm saying they didn't do it by kicking down doors. Just think about the logistics for a second. 1933.
Okay.
No GPS.
Yeah.
No internet. Records were minimal compared to what they have on us today. The idea that the federal government had the manpower, the resources, or even the data to go door to door to millions of American homes to find a few ounces of gold, it's physically impossible.
Agents didn't have GPS in 1933.
They barely had radios. FDR knew that. If you try to use brute force to seize wealth from an entire population, you get 2 results. 1, you trigger a rebellion, and 2, you probably fail to get the assets anyway because people just bury them deeper in the orchard.
So, okay, if the Hollywood raid is a myth, then how did they pull off the heist? Because the numbers in these documents, they're staggering. They effectively nationalized the monetary wealth of the entire country in a matter of weeks. They didn't just ask, they took.
Exactly. But here's the key. They didn't come to you.
What do you mean?
They made you come to them. That is the fundamental psychological shift we have to make today to understand the threat. It wasn't a raid. It was a trap.
A trap.
A trap. And the trap wasn't set in your living room. It was set in the one place you thought was safer than your living room.
The bank.
The bank was the trap.
Wow. Okay, so that is the core thesis we're exploring today. We are going to unpack the day gold was outlawed, Executive Order 6102.
We have to.
But we aren't just doing a history lesson here. I know I'm the history buff at the table, and believe me, I could talk about FDR all day, but that's not the point of this deep dive.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm not here for a history lesson. I'm here because I want to protect my assets in, say, 2026. My argument is simple. To understand the future threat to your crypto or your stable coins or whatever comes next, you have to understand the mechanics of the 1933 gold seizure.
The blueprint.
Exactly. The technology has changed, but the incentives. The human incentives haven't changed one single bit.
So we're going to break this down into 3 main acts. First, the blueprint, how they actually sprang the trap in 1933, using the banking system as the weapon. Second, the crime, and I am using that word deliberately. We're going to look at the math of the revaluation, how they didn't just take the gold, they effectively stole 69% of its value overnight.
That's the heist part. And frankly, the math is the most damning part of this entire stack of papers. It's undeniable.
And finally, and this is where you come in, we're going to pivot to the present. We're going to look at the stablecoin trap and why the death of the CBDC, which, everyone is celebrating right now, might actually be a massive false sense of security.
That's the part that scares me the most. The pivot to the private sector. It's cleaner, it's quieter, and it's so much more effective.
Okay, so let's start with the blueprint. Take us back to March 1933. The context here is it's so crucial because I think people forget how desperate the situation was. This wasn't just a calm Tuesday where the president decided to steal everyone's gold.
No, you have to set the stage. The world was on fire.
Completely.
It's the absolute depths of the Great Depression. Unemployment is at 25%. The banking system is effectively collapsing in on itself. You have bank runs happening all across the country.
You see those old pictures? People lining up around the block?
Right, and they're terrified. They're terrified that their bank is going to fail, and they're just trying to pull out whatever they can, whether it's paper cash or, if they were lucky, gold coin.
And the banks, of course, didn't have the reserves.
Of course not. It's a fractional reserve system.
Sure.
By design, they never have the reserves. If everyone wants their money at once, the whole illusion just breaks.
So FDR comes into office, and his very first move, we're talking literally days after his inauguration, isn't to send out the army to confiscate gold.
No. His first move is to issue a proclamation.
The bank holiday, which I have to say has got to be the greatest euphemism in political history. A holiday. Like the tellers are all going to the beach for a week.
It was brilliant branding. You can't deny that. On March 6, 1933, FDR uses the Trading with the Enemy Act, which is a wartime statute from World War I, by the way.
From the war. So they're treating their own citizens like the enemy.
That's the legal basis he used. And with it, he declares a national banking holiday. He closes every single bank in the country.
Just pause on the psychology of that for a second. Imagine it's 2026. You wake up on a Monday morning, you go to check your banking app on your phone.
And it's grayed out.
Grayed out. You go to the ATM, the screen is black, you drive to the branch, and there are chains on the doors.
It would be panic. Absolute total panic.
But also, it's a specific kind of helplessness, isn't it? Because where is your wealth? It's inside those doors. You are physically locked out of your own life.
And this is the choke point. This is step one of the trap.
Yeah.
You separate the citizen from their assets. Now, here is the detail that just blew my mind when I was reading through the source material on the safe deposit boxes.
Okay, this part is wild.
Because most people assume, and I certainly did, that a safe deposit box is sacrosanct.
Yeah, of course. It's private property. It's not an account. It's a physical box that you rent. The bank doesn't technically own what's inside, right? It's just renting you the space.
Theoretically, that's the theory. But during the bank holiday, the administration issued regulations that effectively sealed the safe deposit vaults. Even if the main bank lobby was open for some emergency transactions, you could not get into the vault.
So they froze everything. Bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, all of it.
They froze everything. But the trap doesn't snap shut when they close the banks. It snaps shut when they reopen them.
Okay, explain that.
The holiday lasts for about a week. Then FDR goes on the radio as his first fireside chat, and he gives this incredibly reassuring speech. He says, it's safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress. He restores confidence. The banks start to open. But there are new rules.
And this is the safe deposit box trap.
This is it. If you wanted to access your box after the holiday, you couldn't just walk in alone anymore. In many documented cases, and certainly under the strictures of the later executive orders, access to safe deposit boxes was restricted. You often had to access the box in the presence of a bank officer.
A chaperone.
A chaperone who was acting as a deputy for the federal government.
Oh, man. Imagine that scene. You go in, you've got your little key, the bank manager has his key, you turn them both, you slide out that long, heavy metal drawer, and standing right over your shoulder is a guy in a suit with a clipboard.
And he's not there to help you lift the box. He's there to audit it. The orders were crystal clear. The hoarding of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates was prohibited.
So if they saw gold in that box...
If they saw gold in that box, it wasn't a friendly warning, it was confiscated.
Confiscated right there on the spot.
Well, the term they used was surrendered. You were forced to exchange it. They took the physical gold, the real money, and they handed you paper Federal Reserve notes at the official statutory rate.
Okay, and we are absolutely going to get to that official rate in a minute because that is where the real crime happens. But I want to stick on the mechanics here for a second.
Sure.
The genius of this is that the government didn't need to chase you. They didn't need a warrant. They didn't need to know where you lived. They waited at the choke point. They knew that sooner or later you would need to go to the bank.
It's a siege mentality. A perfect siege. They didn't storm the castle. They just cut off the water supply and waited for you to walk out with your hands up.
And they used the bank staff to do it. This wasn't FBI agents in every branch. This was the bank manager, the teller you see every week, people you knew and trusted.
And that is the critical lesson for the modern era. That is so important. The government prefers to use intermediaries.
Yeah.
They don't want to fight you directly. It's bad PR. They want to pressure the institution you rely on to do the dirty work for them.
Right.
The bank manager wants to keep his license. He wants his bank to reopen. So he complies. He becomes an agent of the state, whether he likes it or not.
And the whole narrative cover for all of this, I mean, reading the transcripts of FDR's speeches, he doesn't sound like a tyrant. He sounds like a savior.
Oh, completely. Stop the hoarders. That was the language they used.
Hoarders.
If you held gold, you weren't a prudent saver protecting your family. You were a hoarder. You were selfish. You were stalling the economic recovery. You were unpatriotic. They weaponized social pressure.
And it's so effective. You're hurting the team. It turns neighbors against neighbors.
It absolutely does. So you have the physical choke point, which is the bank, combined with the psychological pressure of patriotism. And what happens? Most people just folded. They lined up and handed it in. They didn't want to be the outlier. They didn't want to be the bad guy.
But not everyone did, right? The Executive Order 6102, it actually had exceptions. I was just reading Section 2 of the order, and it lists these specific exemptions. Gold coin and gold certificates in an amount not exceeding in the aggregate $100.
Right, which was about 5 ounces of gold back then, so you could keep a little bit, pocket change, essentially.
Enough to make you feel like you weren't totally stripped bare.
Exactly. But it was just enough to remove the bulk of the monetary wealth from private hands and into the government's hands.
And then there was the other exception, the one for gold coins having a recognized special value to collectors of rare and unusual coins.
The numismatic loophole. This is fascinating because it's the one legal escape hatch that existed in the whole plan.
So if you had rare coins, you were safe.
If you could prove your gold wasn't just money, but was history or art, you were allowed to keep it.
Which sounds great in theory, but I have to imagine it's pretty hard to argue that a stack of standard double eagles from the 1920s is rare art.
It was a very, very narrow door to get through. For the vast majority of people who were just holding bullion or standard coinage as savings, the trap was absolute.
Okay, so the trap springs. The gold is collected. Millions of ounces flow from private hands into the vaults of the Federal Reserve banks. Now we get to the motive. Because if they just wanted to back the currency, if they just wanted to stop the bank runs, they could have just held the gold. But they did something else, something much more profitable.
They repriced it. And this brings us to Section 2, the crime of the century.
I call it a crime. Some might call it a monetary adjustment. But let's just look at the math. Because the math is brutal. It's what makes this a heist and not just a policy shift.
It's a rug pull. It's a nationwide, government-sanctioned rug pull.
So let's walk through it. Step 1. Force everyone to sell their gold to the government. What was the price they paid you for it?
The statutory price, the price that had been set for decades, was $20.67 per ounce. That was the gold standard.
$20.67.
So you walk into the bank, you hand in your 1 ounce gold coin, they hand you a $20 bill and some change. Transaction over.
Okay. The government now has the gold, you have the paper, the transaction is settled, but then, step 2. What happens less than a year later, in 1934?
Once the gold is safely in the government's vaults, and critically, out of yours, FDR signs the Gold Reserve Act. And with the stroke of a pen, he revalues gold to $35 per ounce.
Just let that sink in for a minute. They bought it from you, their own citizens, at roughly $20.
Right.
Then once they had it all, they just declared, actually, it's worth $35 now.
It's a 69% increase in the dollar price of gold overnight. Or, to be more accurate, it's a 40% devaluation of the dollar against gold. Your paper money just lost a huge chunk of its value.
I want to be really clear about what this means for the individual saver. Let's say I was one of the stubborn ones. I refused to turn in my ounce of gold.
The hoarder.
The hoarder, right. I hid it in a coffee can in the backyard. The next morning, after the revaluation, my wealth has effectively jumped up by 69% relative to the dollar.
Correct. Your purchasing power is preserved. You didn't magically make money, But the dollar lost a massive amount of value, and your gold reflected that reality.
But because I followed the law, because I was a patriot and I took the paper money, I missed that entire gain.
You missed it, and the government took it. The government captured that profit for itself.
And we are not talking about pennies here.
No. The resulting profit on the government's books was roughly $2.8 billion in 1934 dollars.
What? What is that in today's money?
It's hard to do a direct comparison, but depending on how you calculate for inflation, you're looking at somewhere between $60 billion and maybe even $100 billion.
Yeah.
It was a massive, massive injection of capital onto the government's balance sheet.
And where did that money go? Did it go to pay off the national debt? Did it go to fund New Deal programs, feed the poor?
No. And this is the part that usually gets left out of the high school history books.
Yeah.
That profit, that $2.8 billion, went into a brand new entity called the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the ESF.
ESF. That sounds like the most boring bureaucratic office you could possibly imagine.
And that's entirely by design.
Yeah.
But the ESF is basically a government slush fund. It sits within the Treasury, but it has immense power and very little oversight.
So what does it do?
It was designed to allow the Treasury to intervene in currency markets to stabilize the dollar without needing congressional approval for every single trade.
Yeah.
Give them a war chest.
Let me get this straight. They confiscated the wealth of their own citizenry to capitalize a fund that operates outside the normal appropriations process.
Essentially, yes. It gave the executive branch a massive, off-the-books war chest. And that war chest was built entirely on the difference between the $20 they paid you and the $35 they said your gold was worth a few months later.
It's a wealth transfer, pure and simple, from the private saver to the state.
And that is the pattern. That is the pattern we have to recognize today. When a government faces a sovereign debt crisis, which they were in 1933, and which we're definitely in now with, $36 trillion in debt.
And climbing.
And climbing. They look at the private wealth of their citizens not as something to protect, but as a resource to be harvested.
Harvesting the saver. That's a chilling phrase. But it brings up a question. Why did they need to devalue the dollar in the first place? Was it just for the profit? Was it pure greed?
It was a combination of things, but the main stated goal was to fight deflation. In the Depression, prices were crashing. Farmers couldn't sell their crops because nobody had any money, and the money they did have was becoming more valuable. By devaluing the dollar against gold, they were trying to create inflation. They wanted to raise prices, make debts easier to pay off.
So they sacrificed the savers to save the debtors?
That is always the trade.
Yeah.
In a debt crisis, that is the fundamental trade that is always made. If you are a saver holding cash or real assets, you are the target. They need your real value to plug the hole in their ledger.
Okay, so that's 1933. The blueprint is clear. Crisis leads to choke point, in this case the banks, which leads to a forced exchange at a low price, which is followed by devaluation and then government profit.
That's a perfect summary of the blueprint.
Now let's pivot, because I know what the listener is thinking right now. Okay, that's history. That was 90 years ago. We don't use gold as money anymore. I have Bitcoin, I have USDC, I have encryption. I'm smarter than the guy in 1933.
And this is where we have to be so careful, because that kind of arrogance is exactly what gets you trapped.
You're the tech analyst here. You're looking at the 2026 landscape. The argument I hear constantly is that gold is old school. The government doesn't care about gold anymore.
And for the most part, they don't. Not really. I mean, if you have a massive vault full of it, maybe they care. But gold isn't the systemic threat to their power that it was in 1933.
Why not?
Because in 1933, gold was the money. If you hoarded gold, you were actively contracting the money supply. You were causing deflation because of the gold standard peg.
Right, because of the peg. It was a closed system.
Exactly. Today, the money is pure fiat. It's digital. It's created out of thin air. The government can print as much as they want whenever they want. So you holding some gold doesn't stop their machine. But the new threat isn't deflation. It's the opposite. It's the exit. It's capital flight.
Explain it.
If everyone starts to lose faith in the U.S. dollar and they move their money en masse from dollars into something like Bitcoin, or even foreign currencies or other hard assets, the demand for the dollar collapses. And that creates a hyperinflationary death spiral.
So the motivation to trap capital is still there. They still need to keep everyone in the dollar system.
The motivation is stronger now than it has ever been. But the how has to change. Because, as we said at the beginning, you can't raid a 12-word seed phrase.
Let's talk about that for a second. The brain wallet. If I memorize my Bitcoin private key, it exists literally as information, as a pattern in my neurons.
Right. In 1933, they could find the physical gold with a metal detector. In 2026, they cannot find your Bitcoin with a brain scan. You cannot kick down a door and seize a thought. It's a different paradigm.
So doesn't that mean we win? If they can't physically seize it, we're safe.
No. No, because you're forgetting the most important lesson of the safe deposit box.
Which is?
They don't need to seize the asset to destroy its utility. They just need to control the choke point.
And what is the choke point today?
It's the interface between the crypto economy and the real economy. It's the bridge. It's the off-ramp.
Before we get to the off-ramp, I really want to address the Trump defense. I see this all over the comments sections online. People say, oh, we don't need to worry about the government taking control of our crypto because Trump blocked the CBDC.
The central bank digital currency. Fedcoin, as people call it.
Right. And the narrative is that the CBDC is the ultimate tool of control, programmable money, direct government surveillance, the whole dystopian package. And since that has been blocked politically, at least for now, people feel like they've dodged a bullet. They feel safe.
It's a victory, sure. I'm glad it was blocked. But it's a Pyrrhic victory if it blinds you to the real threat that's emerging in its place.
Okay.
My argument is that the government doesn't need a CBDC to exert that exact same level of control. They realize something incredibly important. Why build a clumsy, unpopular government-branded coin, which, let's be honest, the government's terrible at building tech anyway?
That's fair.
Why do that when you can just deputize the private sector to do it for you?
Deputize the private sector. You're talking about stablecoins.
Regulated stablecoins. And this is where we get to Section 4, Choke Point 2.0.
So instead of the Federal Reserve issuing Fedcoin, we have private companies like Circle issuing USDC or PayPal issuing PYUSD. These are American companies based here.
They are American companies. They are regulated companies. They have CEOs and board members who can be subpoenaed. They have bank accounts that can be frozen. They have a very strong incentive to stay in business and comply with regulations.
And this is where the stablecoin trap comes into play.
Think about what a stablecoin like USDC actually is.
Yeah.
On the surface, it's a token on a blockchain, yes. But what does it represent? It's backed one-to-one by dollars and treasuries held in a bank account. It is a digital IOU for a real fiat dollar.
It's a claim on a dollar.
It's a claim. And more importantly, the smart contract that governs USDC has a function built directly into it, a kill switch.
The blacklist function.
The freeze function. Circle can, at the push of a button, freeze USDC in any wallet address on the network. It doesn't matter if that wallet is on a hardware wallet in a bunker. It doesn't matter if it's locked up in a DeFi smart contract. If they flag that address, those tokens become immovable, useless glass beads.
Okay, so let's play out the scenario. It's 2026. The debt crisis is getting worse. Inflation is running hot. The government needs to stop capital flight out of the dollar. They don't ban Bitcoin.
No, banning Bitcoin is too messy. It looks too authoritarian. It's bad optics.
Instead, the Treasury Department issues a new guidance. They won't call it a law. They'll call it a guidance.
Of course. And they'll cite national security or anti-money laundering concerns.
The Clean Money Act of 2026.
Perfect. And the rule is simple. From this day forward, U.S. banks and regulated financial institutions can only accept transfers from compliant wallets.
And what's a compliant wallet?
A KYC-verified wallet. A wallet where your real-world identity, your name, your address, your social security number, is cryptographically attached to the address on a government-approved whitelist.
Okay, so I'm a libertarian. I have my Freedom wallet. I generate it myself, offline, no name attached. I hold, say, $100,000 of USDC in there. What happens to me?
Nothing. You aren't arrested. No black SUVs show up at your house. You still have your tokens. You can look at your screen, and the balance still says $100,000. You feel safe.
But
then you try to do something with it. You try to send it to Coinbase to cash out into dollars to pay your mortgage.
transaction rejected.
Rejected. The exchange's system automatically flags it and says, sorry, we cannot accept deposits from unverified, unhosted wallets. Okay, so you try to send it to an online merchant to buy something.
And their payment processor does the same thing. Sorry, we use a compliant payment processor.
Exactly. Your money is trapped. It's stuck in a closed loop. It becomes what we call distressed wealth. You might be able to trade it peer-to-peer with other people who are also blacklisted, but you'll be trading at a massive, massive discount.
A black market dollar.
Exactly. Maybe your Freedom USDC is only worth 60 cents on the dollar because you can't get it into the real-world financial system. You can't off-ramp it.
That's the heist again. It's the same 69% haircut, just with a different mechanism. If my dollar is worth 60 cents and the compliant whitelisted dollar is worth a full dollar,
you just lost 40% of your wealth. And they didn't take it from you. They just broke the bridge between your world and theirs.
that is the digital equivalent of the safe deposit box trap. It's the same logic.
It is the exact same logic. Control the entry and exit points, and you control the value of everything inside the system.
It's genius in a terrifying way. They don't need to attack or seize the Bitcoin network, which is hard. They just need to surround it with a regulatory firewall.
That's what we call financial exclusion.
Mm.
You're not a criminal. You haven't been charged with a crime, but you are excluded from the banking system.
Mm.
You can't buy a house. You can't buy a car. You can't transfer money to your checking account to buy groceries. You were financially exiled in your own country.
And people will self-censor. That's the scariest part. They'll move to the compliant wallets voluntarily because they want convenience. They want to be able to spend their money.
Of course they will, just like they brought their gold to the bank in 1933. Convenience and fear are the two most powerful motivators on Earth.
So, wow. We have painted a fairly bleak picture here. The trap is already set. The government clearly has the incentive. The technology, these programmable, freezable stablecoins, is already built and running at scale.
It is. The infrastructure for this kind of control is live right now. It's not a future hypothetical.
So is there a way out? I mean, we promised a verdict here. If the bank is a trap and the regulated stablecoin is a trap, where is the high ground? What do you do?
To find the solution for 2026, we have to look back and identify the winners of 1933.
The holdouts.
Right. We talked about the losers, the people who complied and lost everything to inflation, who won, the people who didn't comply, the people who, as the internet meme goes, had a tragic boating accident.
I love that meme. So sorry, Mr. IRS agent. All my gold and all my guns, they fell overboard. Tragic.
It's a joke, but it's also a strategy. The people who buried it in the yard. The people who hid it in a false wall in the attic. Now, they took a massive risk. We shouldn't downplay that. If they were caught, the penalties were severe.
What were they?
10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine, which was an absolute fortune back then.
But did they actually prosecute a lot of people for hoarding?
Very, very rarely. They made an example of 1 or 2 high-profile cases to scare everyone else into compliance. But generally no, because again, it came down to logistics. They couldn't search every backyard in America.
So fast forward, it's 1974. President Gerald Ford signs the bill that re-legalizes private gold ownership.
And the person who held on to that 1-ounce gold coin from 1933, they still have the ounce of gold. But the price of gold in 1974 wasn't $20 anymore. It was floating free on the market. By 1980, it hit $850.
So their purchasing power was preserved, and then some. Meanwhile, the people who held the paper dollars were just decimated by the inflation of the 1970s.
So the vindicating factor was defiance. It was maintaining direct physical control of the asset yourself. It was holding what we call a bearer asset.
Let's define that clearly. What exactly is a bearer asset?
A bearer asset is an asset where ownership is defined solely by physical possession, or in the digital world, knowledge of the keys. There is no third party. There is no ledger entry at a bank that says John Doe owns this. If you hold it, you own it, period.
Physical cash is a bearer asset, then.
Physical cash, yes. At least for now.
Yeah.
Until they try to ban large denomination bills, which is another conversation.
Physical gold held in your hand is a bearer asset.
Yes, absolutely.
And Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, and this is a very important distinction, if you hold your own private keys in self-custody, is a digital bearer asset.
But a Bitcoin ETF. If I buy IBIT or FBTC in my brokerage account.
No, absolutely not. That is a claim on an asset. That is a ledger entry on Wall Street's books. That is what we call permissioned wealth.
And a stablecoin like USDC.
Permissioned wealth. As we just discussed, it can be frozen by a third party. It relies on a trusted intermediary circle, Tether, PayPal. My rule of thumb is this. If there is a CEO you can call, there is a choke point the government can squeeze.
This is the critical distinction, isn't it? Permission wealth versus sovereign wealth.
That's it exactly. If your wealth relies on a bank or an ETF manager or a stablecoin issuer to exist, you don't actually own it. You have a permission slip to use it. And in a crisis, permission can be revoked instantly.
That is the ultimate counterparty risk.
It's the whole game. The lesson of 1933 and the lesson for 2026 is that when the crisis hits, the counterparty, the bank, the government, the stablecoin issuer, will always act to save themselves first. And that usually means turning on you. The only true safety is in assets where there is no counterparty.
So if you are sitting there listening to this and all your money is in a bank account, or all your crypto is sitting on an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken,
You are standing in the digital safe deposit box, and you have to understand that the government already has the master key.
that is a chilling thought. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from the dusty physical bank vaults of the Great Depression to the digital firewalls of 2026.
But the story is the same, isn't it? The costumes change, the technology gets more sophisticated, but the plot remains exactly the same.
So let's synthesize this for the outro. If there's one big takeaway from this whole deep dive, what is it?
The takeaway is that the methods change, a bank holiday versus a KYC blockade. But the goal is constant. The state will always seek to trap capital and control the exits during a financial crisis.
And the profit motive is real. This isn't just about control for control's sake. They didn't just take the goal for fun. They took it to recapitalize their own failing system at your expense.
And they will do it again. The national debt is skyrocketing. The incentives to capture private wealth are higher now than they were even in 1933. They have to find the money somewhere.
So here is the question for you, listening right now. We asked this at the very beginning, but hopefully after this conversation, you have a different perspective on it now.
If the order came down tomorrow, not a knock on the door, but a simple notification on your phone saying your account is now restricted to compliant transfers only, would you be ready?
Would you even recognize the trap? Or are you, right now, already standing inside it?
Vigilance is the price of freedom. And in the digital age, holding your own keys is the only way to truly opt out of the trap they're building.
Don't wait for the bank holiday to find out if your safe deposit box is actually safe. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Stay safe out there.
We'll see you in the next one.